That's pretty sweet.
It is pretty sweet. And welcome in everybody to Science Streams. And we have a banger of a show tonight, a great show lined up for you. And I am happy to welcome in Adam Pritchard, who is the Assistant Curator of Paleontology at the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Also with him is Michael Stevens, who we've had on here before and emphatically made sure that this happened. There is no one more excited about Triassic dinosaurs, I think, than Michael. Except maybe Adam. I don't know. But
No. I'm
thanks
excited. I'm excited, but Michael's a cut above.
A cut above. Well, great to have you here. And anything else you want to say about yourself as we get into this chat?
I think that what you said sums it up. I am the assistant curator of paleontology here at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, which I'll abbreviate as VMNH, because museums like to do that. I am charged with it's a role with many hats. I am charged with the care and study of the fossil collections here, which include several 100,000 specimens ranging from tiny invertebrate shells all the way up to massive bones of dinosaurs, mammoths, whales. I do research. I'm charged with kind of doing science outreach, much as like this is part of the job right now. And it's great to be able to address this. I feel like I operate in a relatively primitive world of science outreach. This is my first stream, so I'm excited to expand my horizons.
Awesome. I'm glad you're taking the opportunity to do it with us here on Science Streams and our community of science Twitch folk. I know there's a lot here. Some more will be coming in later. And I know that you're actually at the museum right now.
Yeah.
So this is another first for us.
I'm not going to stream from my bedroom.
Well, that's where most people stream from. Some home office. Of course, this all started during COVID, so a lot of this was, people were at home and not necessarily at work. So
emergency.
Oh, Hank Bud is rating us with a party of 15. Thank you for joining us, Hank Bud. I really appreciate you coming in here and rating us. Welcome, everyone. I am Scott. I am Science Streams. I'm a science teacher. And with us is Adam. And Adam is the Assistant Curator of Paleontology at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, or VMNH. And we are talking dinosaurs, particularly Triassic dinosaurs today. And we were just mentioning how you're actually at the museum right now.
Yep. I am surrounded by the fossil collections right as we speak. My computer is not very mobile, but I'll hop off and hop on to my iPad to guide folks around to not only examine some of the fossils from the Triassic, the kind of crucial period that we'll be focusing on tonight, but also just to show like what the back room of at least our museum looks like. And it's pretty representative of how most museums house the collections of artifacts, fossils, modern organisms that they possess. It's what we do. It's a big part of what we do that just doesn't get the attention that the exhibits get, simply because it's behind the scenes.
So, and I'm looking forward to seeing this. So this is a new thing for my Connected Conversation series, is kind of having a tour of a facility almost. That's kind of new. So I'm excited to see how that works, and that'll be a lot of fun. So I don't know what you want to talk about first, but I'm thinking we kind of go into what you and Michael have done.
Yeah, and Michael, if it's okay, I'm going to start real broad with like why the Triassic is great. and then zoom into the specifics about why we're working the sites that we do. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool beans. Um, my computer is not mobile, but fortunately some of the stuff is. So just starting with the concept of dinosaurs. I mean, they're iconic. They're the most famous group of extinct organisms that has ever existed. And Jurassic World Dominion came out recently, for better or for worse, so they're back into the public consciousness. But the Jurassic World representation of dinosaurs, and indeed most representations of dinosaurs, are of gigantic animals, ones that are the dominant feature on the landscape, ones that are just almost an overwhelming force. And you can see why. I have here a replica of the skull of a what's called a sauropod dinosaur. So this is one of the long necks. Specifically, this is an animal called Diplodocus, known from the western United
Yes.
States. Yeah. So this is a critter that
Nice.
has a neck that's 20 plus feet, a body that can be 80 feet long. I mean, it's this is the kind of thing you think when you think of dinosaur. I'd grab our replica T-Rex head, but that's just not going to happen right now. But like dinosaurs and size and dominance are just something that are all features that we associate with their role in Earth's history. But what's remarkable to me about that history is it has to begin somewhere. Now, Diplodocus that I showed you comes from a time in Earth's history called the Jurassic period. Everyone knows that name, which began around 201 million years ago. Before the Jurassic, there is another period called the Triassic, which runs from 252 million years ago to the beginning of the Jurassic, 201 million years ago. And what's remarkable about the Triassic is at the very beginning of that period, there are no dinosaurs. There are all kinds of strange reptiles. There are all kinds of critters running around the landscape, but there are no dinosaurs. The emergence of dinosaurs as something in the ecosystem is a very gradual process that we're only beginning to understand as people study this period in the Triassic. Basically, about the middle of the Triassic, around 225 million years ago, we first start seeing animals that have the anatomy. It's a lot of fossils are what's left of the anatomy of the animals. So that's what we use to define what kind of species we're talking about, what kind of larger groups we're talking about. And the first animals with dinosaur features to show up on the landscape, it's about 225 million years ago. So smack dab in the middle of the Triassic. They are small. The average, I'd say the average is between a house cat and a German Shepherd. And for a while, like that German Shepherd size is about as big as dinosaurs get. And it's not like these smaller animals are, it's not like they're the biggest creatures on the landscape. There are a lot of other reptiles that don't have the classic dinosaur features, some of which are more closely related to modern crocodiles, some of which are wholly extinct lineages that don't have any real descendants now. And among those are much larger predatory animals that are in the 20-foot range, a whole host of different herbivores, some with armor, some with tusks, just a huge variety of strange critters, both large and small, that lived alongside these early dinosaurs. As the Triassic progresses, we start to see a lot of these ancient lineages related to crocodiles, related to nothing today, disappear from the fossil record. And kind of as they do, dinosaurs start pulling in to those roles in the ecosystem. You start to see the emergence of a lot of herbivorous dinosaurs, particularly the ancestors of things like Diplodocus, these early long-necked animals. And by the beginning of the Jurassic, a lot of the bizarre extinct critters of the Triassic are gone. And in the Jurassic, we finally see the world, we see the beginnings of a world that we can typically think of as the age of dinosaurs, where they are the top predators, they are the largest herbivores. There's a whole host of them, down the food chain, down to like cat and rat sized animals. So they're just doing a lot of different things. But studying the Triassic is crucial to figuring out how that happened and the pace that it happened, where it happened geographically on the planet. And the reality is, we are missing huge swaths of fossils from that time period simply because certain areas haven't been studied extensively. The fossil record of that period is it's not horrible. There are some periods in Earth's history where we just have nothing. The Triassic, we have a fair amount, but there are huge gaps, like I said, geographically. And one of the areas that's really interesting, pulling back a little bit, another thing that makes the Triassic interesting and kind of awesome is this is the time of the supercontinent of Pangaea. So at this point in Earth's history, throughout the Triassic, all of the continents that we have today are glommed together into a single supercontinent. And it is a place of extremes towards the center of Pangaea. There are massive central deserts that would have seen almost no rains for that long periods of time. Closer to the further north and south of that, we get bands of tropical environments, things we could compare to rainforests and swamps. It's a very hot time in Earth's history, although weirdly enough, a paper came out recently that showed that there are some portions of Pangaea during the last part of the Triassic that at least seasonally froze over.
We looked at that paper last week.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool. And it suggests all kinds of that's
and
another
there
thing
were dinosaur-like creatures in the Arctic, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Bucking the trend of what you think of as the tropical behemoths.
Mm-hmm.
That you often think about. That's kind of they should have that next movie. It should be set above the Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's one thing that's interesting. Like we knew before this paper that polar dinosaurs existed in the Jurassic and throughout the Cretaceous period, so throughout the rest of dinosaur history. But the idea not only that there were these cold environments, but the dinosaurs existed in them is very new. So we're constantly adapting our thinking about what this early time in Earth's history looked like.
Well, when you think about it, it almost makes sense. It's like, well, why wouldn't living things be in a place where living things could exist? I mean, we see that today. I mean, there's life all over the planet, everywhere. So it would just make sense that it's there too. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, ignorant of us to think that, there's no, but like you said, there's these huge gaps, that we could say that there probably were if we thought about it, but there was no evidence for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And one of those key gaps that is worth introducing is our understanding of the early age of dinosaurs across the eastern United States. And the reason I brought up Pangaea is because the eastern U.S. or the eastern part of North America was glommed onto the northwest of Africa and the southwest of Europe. Like all of those were sort of very centrally placed within Pangaea. And so it's a really interesting area for potential exchanges between regions of Pangaea. But our record in the eastern part of North America is patchy. We have a remarkable resource, though, and that's a series of rock layers that this is what I was thinking. I'll send I'll screen share of real quickly. There's a series of rock layers that run from Nova Scotia south to the Carolinas. Let's see. How do I do this? Actually, I can just drop the image in chat too, I guess.
Good. Or Michael can do it. So you can put it in our the video chat, not the Twitch chat.
Not the Twitch chat? Okay.
Yeah, you won't be able to do it there. The auto mod will say, no, bad. Can't do
it. Alrighty. Yeah, it's just a Wikipedia link, or yeah, a Wikipedia link to a map of the Newark supergroup, just to show that we do have rocks from this crucial time that stretch across eastern North America. So it's there. The problem with eastern North America, as a rule for paleontologists, is there's a lot of stuff on top of the rock layers, and that's not the case out west, where you can walk for miles and miles and not see much plant life or suburbia for quite a while. So finding regions of this Newark supergroup that are accessible to digging for fossils and not parking lotted over is not an easy thing. Which is at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, it's one of the reasons I work here in particular, is because there's a lot of different Triassic layers in Virginia. I've actually got 2 specimens here I'll show you from different sites in the Newark supergroup. The first is from a city called Culpeper, Virginia, which is north central, south of DC. And there we have some evidence of some of those first dinosaurs and their presence in the state. Virginia is notable for having thus far no definitive dinosaur bones, which is I'm totally okay with and not at all frustrated about. But we do have a certain site in this town of Culpeper that has produced hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur tracks. So this is always a hard thing to show, but I hope you can see here toe.
Oh, okay, I see it.
So this is a 3-toed footprint from an early carnivorous dinosaur. Probably an animal that would have been a little bigger than the ones I was talking about earlier. This is sheep-sized, I guess. So still not all that large, but solid evidence that they were present in the state. And in terms of some of those bizarre animals that I was mentioning earlier that aren't dinosaurs, we actually do have quite the abundance of those at different areas in the state of Virginia. I have here a specimen of one of my favorite reptiles from the Triassic period that is absolutely not a giant and certainly not a dinosaur. This is an animal called Tannytrachelos. Boy, is it going to be hard to see. Hang on.
Tannytrachelos.
See if I can get.
I like the name.
See if I can get this. There we go.
Tannytrachelos.
All right.
Oh, I see it.
Out, yeah, you've got the kind of the neck region here. The forelimbs. Its legs are sort of akimbo back here, and then a long, slender tail extending out from that. This is from a site that preserves an ancient lake bed. These animals in particular like really had a preference for dying and being buried at the bottom of the lake because we've got over 300 skeletons of them
Wow.
housed here at the museum, which is it's a crazy fossil. When you're dealing with vertebrate fossils, those are backboned animals, you don't get a sample size like that. So it's a really it's neat. It's neat to be able to say we have that many of this. But those are just some examples of the very different kinds of fossils from the Triassic that we are getting from different sites in Virginia.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
now let's just to kind of give the update on what is newest and something we're still very actively working on. And a big part of that project is my colleague Michael, who led me to a fascinating fossil site 2.5 years ago. Michael, is that right?
So
That
it's
seems
something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Try 20.
Yeah, I think it was very early 2020.
It was
Um,
it's January. I cannot put
yep.
like yes, it's right before COVID.
Yeah. And Michael had the strength of will to reach out to the landowners in that area who were not only interested in allowing us to work there, but they were really excited about the potential for scientific discoveries there. And that's something I'll show you some of the fossils from our new site. Because what's really remarkable about it is it comes smack dab in the middle of the Triassic during that time where dinosaurs first appear. So there is this exciting potential that the site we are working right now, which is it's in the Circum-Richmond area, I'll say that much, um, contains some of those early dinosaur fossils. Um, in addition to that, though, we have what's great about it is we have records of pretty much the entire ecosystem preserved at that one site. We have specimens that range from the teeth of early reptiles. We have beautiful fossils of plant life from the time, including ferns,
Hmm.
um, small tree trunks, branches. We also have records of fishes that existed at the time. Very recently, one of my colleagues discovered what he thinks are the elytra, sort of the back wing covers of a beetle from the site. So there's this just burgeoning just ecosystem that we're beginning to understand from this crucial period from a fossil site that wasn't even recognized 3 years ago, and that's really exciting.
Wow. Now, this is where I think, Michael was talking about when he was on, like a month ago or whatever, about going out there and doing his digs, you know, and getting dirty and looking for
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um, is there anything in particular that you are looking for when you're going out there that you're kind of like,
My when you say what I'm looking for, do you mean like on a scientific level, what kind of organisms am I studying, or do you mean like
right?
how do I recognize a good spot?
More of like, is there a specific like question that you're trying to answer, or is it just kind of like, let's go see what we can find and then publish a paper?
For me, it's a mix of those things. I my role in paleontology has often been exploratory. Like, I mean, and that's kind of how it has to start when you have such a dearth of information about certain regions of the world. It's like you can develop a hypothesis like dinosaurs were present here, and
Mm-hmm.
that is something that drives some of the quest for fossils in the Newark supergroup in this particular, and in Virginia in particular. um, but in many ways we know so little about the organisms that were alive in certain parts of the Triassic that exploration is really at the center of it. For me personally, I am interested in animals like little Tanny Trachelos. I am interested in sort of the small backboned animals that were alive during the Triassic. I have a good comparative context because I've done a lot of research on those small vertebrates out in the American West. That was a big part of my dissertation, which is now many years ago. So part of my quest is to find material of those same kinds of animals in the eastern United States and see just what kind of commonalities exists and what kind of differences. We know from prior studies of this region of the Newark supergroup that it was at least a wetter area in on the Earth than the western areas that were at least seasonally dry. So we have some evidence of environmental distinctions. And what's going to be really interesting about really correlating what kind of organisms we find at our site with what's out west is we hopefully will be able to recognize different groups that were resilient to these kinds of environmental differences and the groups that were like, no, I am staying out where it's dry, or I am staying out where it's rainy.
Now, would you expect to find, like, I would think now you would find like subspecies, right? One adapted more for like the dry area and one adapted more for a wet area, but essentially they're very similar. So I can see, like, you find a lot of these tiny tracheoloses, maybe there'd be some, difference between them between places.
And this is like the dream in a way of paleontology, particularly vertebrate paleontology. With something like Tanny Trachelos, that would be great. The problem being that the only place on Earth that we have that massive sample size where we can understand variation in this particular group of animals is this one site in Virginia. We have actually bits and pieces of Tanny Trachelos out in the American West, but they're just bits and pieces. There's not even a single skeleton that's been found articulated or still fitted together. So to make those comparisons between these different regional groups at this point is not tenable, and that's one of the curses of paleo. Is it's like our sample sizes outside of things like shelled invertebrates are too low to really assess like fine scale differences between things like subspecies. When you get like massive differences, like, oh well, this animal has a thigh bone that looks absolutely nothing like this other animal, you're able to at least distinguish between species and broader groups of reptiles or whatever you happen to be studying. But once you get down to that kind of the sort of variations that modern zoologists and botanists are focused on because they inform how organisms are responding to things like climate change, we don't have that power in paleo, at least not yet.
And you don't have
Maybe.
the genetic tests, that's a big kind of
No,
can't do that.
it's you see, there's evidence nowadays that you can at least you can't get genetic material, but you can get protein sequences out of fossil bone that is, I think the limit right now is 4 million. So you get
Which
some
is
really
amazing
old
when you think about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
oh,
that
it's
was one of those things
great.
they thought that you would never be able to do that back when I was a
No,
kid.
yeah.
Like,
And
that's
this
not preserved.
mhm. Whenever someone says to me like, "Is Jurassic Park, is that going to happen?" I I usually part of my instinct is to just say no and leave it at that. But I always kind of temper it to say like, today I would say no, but there are so many things that we never thought would happen in paleontology, in the sciences, that we never would have thought possible, that I can't say that this isn't going to be possible in a century or, you know, further into the future. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm the same way with my students. I can't say if something is going to be impossible or not, because I don't want to say anything's impossible, because then no one will try, right?
Yeah.
Because
No, it's very. I think that's it's very easy to discourage, like the. I don't know exactly how to phrase it. Like the sort of there's sort of almost a sense of cynicism
yeah,
when I talk about certain things in paleontology. It's like, well, we can't know today. We can't know that. Like, you know, well, we don't know. We don't have that. We don't actually have that information, and it kind of cuts. Like it cuts back on people's enthusiasm sometimes. It's like, oh, you don't, so you don't know whether it um, ate animals like that, or you don't know whether it could run 50 miles an hour. It's like,
but I think that's how you know if
no.
someone has that knack for science, because a science person will be like, "Oh, you don't know yet? Well,
Yeah, yeah.
how can we find
And
out?" Right?
and I personally always try to like say like,
Yeah.
but if you
But
wanted to become a scientist, maybe you're going to find the technique, maybe you're going to figure it out.
yep, yep.
And I have to add, I mean, my dream find would be, every dinosaur, complete Phytosaur, or what is, of um, an animal like Postasuchus or something
Yeah,
like that. I mean, to find something like that out there would be, I mean, excellent. I mean,
yeah. And if I might say, Michael, the Phytosaurs and Postasuchus are some of these large crocodile-like animals that existed during the Triassic that were way further up the proverbial food chain relative to dinosaurs. I'm gonna do a quick Google just to find some good Phytosaur pictures, just to give a sense for how awesome some of these critters were.
yeah, I mean, they really were awesome. I think to find good specimens there would be
Yeah,
important. I believe they were there. I believe dinosaurs there. I think Postasuchus was probably there, being probably Carnifex, and just a great group of reptiles. It clearly does probably, I mean, does probably being the most famous on the Pterosaur Basin, probably, but
yeah,
I mean, I think there was so much reptile this that we just don't know of. That I mean, I think there could produce maybe 15 to 16 big carnivorous reptiles, but we just don't know. I mean,
yeah. And I guess I could, if people are, if it seems like a good time, I could transition into the sort of show and tell component of things, and wander around the collection space and show some of these fossils, if that sounds good.
That'd be great. And I think we kind of have to have like, so the Phytosaur is like that crocodilian type thing, right?
Yeah, that's the first one with they're I always say they're like crocodiles, but the nostrils have actually shifted up between the eyes. It's almost like a crocodile with a blowhole. And then Postasuchus looks very much like a dinosaur, but it's not. It has the skeleton is radically different despite its overall body shape.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna get some pictures and put them up there, unless you shared one.
and then Carphax was a two-legged predator that walked on two legs. It's in North Carolina. And the other side, Carphax a little bit more. I don't know how to describe it really.
I think you described it pretty well. It's a big crocodilian looking thing that was bipedal. It was walking on two legs. So
Can you describe Tasmania?
I'll yeah, let me find one more picture.
I mean,
Does well, yeah.
Postasuchus, it looks like if your dog had a head of a tyrannosaur. You know,
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, kinda.
That's
What's crazy about
terrifying.
Postosuchus, it is a terrifying animal. But what's kind of funny about it is if you look at its skeleton, it's not really captured in the reconstruction. The hands on a Postosuchus are these teeny tiny little these teeny tiny little things on relatively long arms, but
Mhm.
they're just like these very delicate looking little fingers. I can't quite conceive of what the function of a Postosuchus's hands would be if one assumes there was a function in the first place. Yeah. The other animal Michael mentioned is actually sort of a unique feature of Virginia paleontology. It's one of the only skeletons that's been discovered near the site that we work. It was found in the late 1970s, and it is another bizarre crocodile looking animal that no one quite knows what to do with. It's a great reconstruction by a paleo artist on DeviantArt here. Very long, slender snout. Covered in armor all over its body. Not clear whether it was upright posture, quadruped, walking on all fours. Not clear whether its posture was upright or more sprawling like a lizard. But yet another. This is one of the things that to me makes the Triassic so exciting. Is our understanding of the groups of organisms that existed at the time is so limited that quite often a new discovery, especially in a new region or a new fossil site, is kind of stretches the imagination. It's like, oh, here's an animal that combined all of these bizarre features that we've never seen combined in a single animal before, and apparently they lived during the Triassic. So that just kind of keeps happening, which is part of the reason I really like studying the period. Yep.
All right, let me look at
Alrighty,
this
so
one.
I'll
Hold
hop
on.
off for a sec and then get back on the echoey iPad so I can show some real fossils. Well, more real
One
fossils.
block first, down. That's the one the guitar. Hey, guy, what's the C?
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll get to the bone block.
The bone block.
Don't worry. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is something that Michael and I have been obsessed with for quite some time. But I'll show you in a sec.
All right. In the meantime, we're going to entertain ourselves with pictures of Phytosaurs and Postosuchus, which are undeniably scary. And not just scary because it's on DeviantArt. That site is scary in general. Oh, that is weird. All right, I want to put that link in the chat so you can look at it. That is like an amazing looking creature. Imagine that thing like walking around. Oh my god. Eesh. See, I kind of like this picture as well. Let me add this image. Sukas. Browse this. I found this one as well. Same site. Look, it's got little knobby hands. What would those hands be used for? What would that be used for? Give me a second. I will, I just have to go into, for that donate link, I just have to go onto Discord. That's all. If you want to talk about that, Michael, I will post that right now. But the
I'll get Antic straight when he gets back. I think he's the better person.
okay, all right. I can post it again if need be. I'm just going to keep talking about these horrifying things called postosuchuses, and deviantart. But the topic of conversation was what the heck were these hands used for?
We don't know.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Someone's got to figure it out. Maybe it was used for like carrying something
I
or
mean,
digging.
it
No, they're
could
probably
have
too
been
short
used
for
for
digging.
mating of something. We just don't know. I mean,
You have to catch them in the act. You have to find a fossil of them actually doing something with their hands.
I,
And, which is not very likely.
yeah.
Right. And while we have a moment, and we're waiting for him to get those specimens, thank you everyone for being here. I am Scott Science Streams. Michael Stevens is also here at the moment. He was on a little while ago. So many people stopping in for the first time. Claire Burr, thanks for being here. Rabbit and McDowell, awesome to have you here. Altmus Frizzle here again as well, which is awesome.
All right. I believe I have returned. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, just give me a second to get the link up.
Sure.
There will be a little bit of an echo. That's just the way it is.
Adam,
Yes, sir.
when you came, could you extend the donation since Sop posted that too? Because you're not telling me probably.
What's that?
Sop posted the donation link. When you can, could you talk a little bit about what we're doing?
No, I'll talk a little bit about it. I don't. I'm not supposed to talk. Yeah, I'll talk a little about it.
Okay, I see a nice sign that says Virginia Museum of Natural
Yeah,
History.
just doing publicity. Oh, by the way, I don't. Are people able to hear right now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Cool. Let me know when to go ahead and get started.
Go ahead. You got you
Alrighty.
on camera.
Well,
we can all, like I said, we can all hear you. We can all
okay, you
see
can all
the
hear me.
Virginia
All right.
Museum of
Cool.
Natural History.
Yes.
No one in chat
I
is
think
saying
one thing
anything
that's
is
worth-
wrong.
One thing that's worth noting is, oddly enough, for the State Museum of Natural History, we are not located in Richmond or even near Richmond. We are in Martinsville, Virginia, which is in the far sort of south central area of the state. So if by any chance you find yourself down in southernmost Virginia, look us up. We're a pretty neat place to visit. The room I'm standing in, room 106 in our museum, is the primary place where we keep the collections for most of the vertebrate fossils and the paleobotany collections, so the fossil plants. This is just one of 3 aisles of storage cabinets where we maintain all of our collections. It is, on a good day, pretty climate controlled. Our humidity is very low. We try and keep temperature. You always need a sweater or something like that when you're in here, which is good. It just kind of keeps things intact. Just to show you some non-Triassic fossils, and also to show this is the nice ordered section. We're preparing for an event called the Dinosaur Festival, which if you're in South Central Virginia on July 22nd and 23rd, you can come by the museum to see some special dinosaur displays and some demonstrations and things like that. And the rest of my space is occupied by all of the casts and original specimens, some Triceratops horn, a T-Rex replica cast, some foot bones from a sauropod, a long-necked dinosaur, a little stegosaurus skull there, all of which are, scattered about in preparation for that. So that is the messy side of the fossil collection world. And this is the nice, nice cozy ordered side. And I'll take you over to where we're currently storing the stuff from the new site. So a lot of specimens that we've had some time to study, a lot of ones that we have not. Probably the most impressive one, and the one that has caused Michael and I the greatest interest, is the partial kind of leg skeleton of a reptile that is as yet unidentified. So that is a single limb bone you can see running right there, and then a series of what seem to be toe bones still embedded in the rock behind it. What's remarkable about this is this, you can see by my hand, this isn't a particularly large, this was not a particularly large animal. We're talking something a little bigger than a house cat. The rock that this used to be encased in was, oh God, it initially weighed, it had to weigh over 200 pounds. It was a massive boulder that we were only able to get out of the site, which is sort of in a valley that cuts into the Virginia Triassic rocks, because one of the locals who was very interested in the project happened to have an ATV that he strapped this boulder to, and without him, it never would have reached the museum. But then we've rock sawed it down, and the next mission for a specimen like this is to take it to a specialized facility that does what's called micro CT scanning, which is basically the extremely detailed version of the kind of hospital CAT scans that you get. And what I'm hoping for is we'll not only be able to get a nice three-dimensional model of the rest of this limb bone, but also to see the details of how these little, very delicate bones are arranged, and in the best of all possible worlds, to see that there is, in fact, more fossil bone embedded inside of this rock, which is a very hard sandstone that is resistant to pretty much anything we want to do with it. Incredibly frustrating, but there's obviously treasures in those to be found. So there's that. Some of the other specimens from the site are, this one's a little harder to see, but you can see just how radically different some of these are from that skeleton in sandstone. This is a piece of shale that was discovered at the site, and not fully prepared out, but embedded in it. You probably can see those shiny objects right there next to my thumb. This is the flank of a Triassic fish. They happen to be covered in these really beautiful, shiny black scales that are effectively, the tissue around them is effectively just like our tooth enamel. It's one of the hardest tissues that vertebrate animals can produce, and these fish were just covered in this kind of material. So, we have these sandstones, these massive rocks that contain reptile bones, but we also have these very delicate fossils preserved in these thin layers of shale from the site as well.
So is that the same site? Meaning you have sandstone and you have shale in a close proximity?
Yes, and I'll show you. We've got those two things very close together, which is really impressive. Like, it's something that doesn't happen very often. But that's not all. This hash that you can see here is actually all plant material. There's a fern running right along there. You can see its fronds, another fern. This right here, this striated structure, is a pretty large branch of a tree. So we have a variety of different plants. And this is not in shale, nor is it in sandstone. It's in this relatively soft mudstone that if you can, we split these actually with just simple hand tools like awls and screwdrivers at the site. And it's a preservation type that looks nothing like the bone or the fish fossil. So that is yet a third different kind of fossil material that we're getting out of this site. These are rock layers, or these are individual rock layers that are maybe 100, 150 feet from one another. And to have that kind of variety of fossil all near one another is just, it's really, really uncommon, especially for fossils from the eastern United States. And some of my personal favorites, we have a fair number of these very large conical teeth of early reptiles found in isolation, still working with some other scientists in Virginia and DC to try to understand what these are. And there actually is argument as to whether they belong to those sort of weird crocodile-like Phytosaurs that I showed you, or some as yet unknown reptile group, because they don't quite match up with the shape of Phytosaur teeth. But that's yet another mystery we're getting out of the site. And this is more of that really hard sandstone that we can't really process. It's actually filled with tiny, tiny bits of fish. Some scales there. Some more little bits next to my thumb. In an ideal world, we would be able to expose this to some kind of acid or chemical bath, break all of the rocks surrounding this down, and have this beautiful collection of little fossils ranging from this massive tooth down to these beautiful little fish bones and scales. But that hasn't happened yet, and we've consulted some of the world experts on attacking these specimens, and no one knows how to do it. So it's yet another one of those mysteries in science that we haven't yet resolved. But that's sort of a sampler platter of the kinds of things that we have from the site. A lot of slabs of sandstone that we haven't fully checked out at this point. You can see pretty much everything in black here is a fossil. Most of them belong to small fishes and things like that. You can actually see this groove right here was cut by a high-powered rock saw that still failed to get through this entirely. We've upgraded recently, so I'm actually going to try and tackle one of these again, just to see if we can get it. But that not only presents kind of the diversity of different kinds of fossils we're getting from our site in Virginia, but also some of the diverse challenges that we're facing in attacking these sorts of specimens and understanding, on our quest to understand what is going on in the Virginia Triassic and who are the players. Was there anything else I should show, Michael? Did I cover most of the good stuff?
How about that soft one go up and that sign that right there from Tomahawk?
Well, that's in a different aisle. I mean, I'll go ahead and open that up, but yeah. So what Michael's describing is we actually have, we have loads of material from the Triassic, because one of the past curators here at the museum had the same obsessions that I do, but he was actually from Scotland, so brought in a lot of material from the United Kingdom. Quite oddly, I regularly have visitors, scientists visitors to our fossil collections that are from Europe, interested in this European material, and they're coming to the middle of the boonies in Virginia in order to actually study them. So these are some of those fossils Michael was talking about. Now these are nicely embedded in chunks of hard cave limestones and calcite crystals, and you can see some bones there and there. These do break down chemically, so with this they were able to get a lot of really impeccable material from small backboned animals. Let's see here. What's a good one? Ah, there we go. So all of those are little limb bones of early reptiles, some intact, some broken, but yeah, we have thousands upon thousands of specimens of these guys. One of my dreams is that one of the layers in our Virginia site has the capacity to produce specimens like this. As yet, that absolutely has not happened, but
I think it's there.
I hope you're right. I really do.
I think with another 25 years of clawing there, I think we'll have
I'm
some
good with
luck.
25 years of work there.
I mean,
Hopefully.
maybe longer, but I really think it's gonna produce huge qualities.
These are all little chunks of jawbone from early lizard relatives. Right there. So I talked about the early dinosaurs as being comparatively small animals on the landscape, you know, in that cat to sheep size and things like that. But that is far from the smallest kinds of critters you were dealing with at the time. There were a lot of early lizard relatives, and I'll show you one Virginia specimen of an early mammal relative that was also quite small.
From Richmond.
What's that?
It's from Richmond, I should add.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So right, come on, focus. Yeah, this right here. You can see one of the holes for its teeth. Some of the holes for its teeth. That's it. Inside view. This is the jaw of what would have probably looked like a really ugly, fuzzy possum that lived alongside the early relative, or these animals like Phytosaurs and Postosuchus and these early dinosaurs. So that's another thing that doesn't get remarked on, and I don't talk about it as much because I'm so interested in sort of the history of reptiles. Is there are sort of mammal precursors also running around at this time. And by the end of the Triassic, a lot of their weird relatives have gone extinct, leaving the earliest ancestors of the modern mammal fauna. Just because I left them
from out west, there's a museum of the
What's that?
You know, based like New Mexico out west, you get some preservation differences, can you?
Nothing good. I don't have anything good like complete elements or anything like that. I was actually just going to show off some of my other favorite Tannitracolos specimens. Oh, is this one going to show up? Nice. There he is. Yeah. So you can see skull, long, slender neck. In this case, it's just sort of the forequarters, but there's the arm and the hand. Again, nice dinky little critters.
Was that in shale?
Yeah, these are all preserved in shale, and my absolute favorite, drum roll please, is that one right there. It's down to the sub-millimeter thick toes. This is just one of the most complete specimens.
Oh, lost sound.
Fossil, and all kinds of different preservational types help. All kinds of different geographic sampling helps. It's It's a quest. And that's kind of the story of the Triassic stuff that we've got here that I was going to share. Michael, do you have any other thoughts? You know these things as well as I do.
We never saw in the lab.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So, good point. Collections filled with cabinets, filled with fossils that look really nice. But fossils rarely come in looking really nice, which is why, if I have my keys with me, going across the hall. You have to be careful in. I really like that it's sort of dotted with the artwork of past tour experiencers. There we go. So this is our fossil preparation laboratory, and it is a very, very busy place. So initially, I'll try and find a good example. A lot of the fossils, because we're so efficient, a lot of the fossils here have already kind of come out of the earth that encased them. But I'll show, just as an example, here's a specimen that is still very much embedded in the rock that it came home in. So this jumble here is a mix of mud and hard crystalline material, and what it actually contains is not a Triassic animal, but a much more recent one. This is the remains of a big cat that was discovered in a cave in Southwest Virginia. This is its upper arm bone. This is its shoulder blade. But right now, it is totally embedded in this material. So we need to use all kinds of tools to attack this kind of hard material and get the fossil out safely. To do that, we range from all kinds of relatively basic hand tools. The most delicate you can use is something like a dental pick. Like if you're really careful, if you really got softer material, but your fossil is potentially quite delicate all on its own, a dental pick is a pretty good tool. We actually have some sewing needles to go down one level further, and then this is what's called a pin vise, which contains a relatively thick, hard carbide needle that can be a little stronger. But when those hand tools fail, we go up and start using some more heavy-duty mechanical stuff. Yep, our lab is fitted with air hoses and basically a compressor system. Part of that allows us to help drain the excess dust created by all the preparation out of the lab, so we don't choke on that or get really sick. But part of it is to power these tools. This is what's called an air scribe. It is another, kind of drill with a little carbide needle on it, but hooked up to an air supply, this will vibrate incredibly quickly and can plow through hard matrix, or what we call matrix, the rocks surrounding fossils, much more easily than a tool simply powered by hand can do. Get a couple of those in here. And one thing I think is absolutely crucial that is definitely not recognized in paleontology is in the process of doing this and in the process of studying fossils, things break. Like they're delicate structures and things break, and as a result, we have all kinds of glues. So we use a variety of different materials. This is one called Butevar. There is literally a company called Paleobond, which produces a really nice a nice glue. The idea of this is it's really good at it's archival. So it's, you could basically use Elmer's glue to put some of this stuff together. I wouldn't recommend it because you don't, 50 years from now or even 5 years from now, you don't know if that's going to hold up. You don't know if that's going to start cracking or, showing damage. So we try and use specialty materials when we're doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, but projects running in the lab right now. This is another piece of that big cat skeleton that's embedded in that hard material. Sometimes when we need to remove dust on a more precise level, this is just like, we co-op tools all the time. This is like an office, like a little office dust vacuum. Thigh bone here. The hips are embedded inside of this rock here, and they're really hard to see because as yet this hasn't been prepped out all that much. This mess is the backbone of a Jurassic dinosaur, sort of the round part at the bottom. This space is where the spinal cord would go, and it's surrounded by what we call a plaster jacket. This is something that we build both in the field and in the lab to safely encase a fossil with at least some of the original rock matrix around it, in order to better kind of contain the fossil within a housing that is comparatively safe. And then in the ideal world, once something is fully prepped out of a plaster jacket, it looks something like this. These are backbones from a Jurassic carnivorous dinosaur, Allosaurus, that were recently prepped by an intern. Yep. So these were in one of those jackets. He pulled them out. He very carefully removed all of the matrix around them, did a whole bunch of gluing. He also... for places where there were distinct gaps, we used certain kind of plasters and putties to fill some of those gaps and create more stability in the specimen. But this is the ideal, and that's the kind of stuff that would go into a display, or in the most dramatic situations, a mounted skeleton.
It's actually because paper towels, they're tinfoil, and then plaster pads soaked in borax.
Yeah, Michael is right that usually when we create those plaster jackets, we start out by covering the specimen, especially the exposed bone, in either tinfoil or wetted toilet paper, just to create a separator layer. Because if you layer the plaster directly on the bone, there's the possibility that if you peel up the plaster, you're going to tear the bone as you do it. So having a soft separator layer is really is pretty ideal. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We use all kinds of microscopes to really precisely observe what kind of rock we're removing, and just to make ourselves nervous, basically, because you can see the tiniest chip of bone like being removed is just cause for a quick panic attack and a reevaluation of what you're doing.
Can they extend the dust system, Am, and the microabrasion? I know a lot of people said paleontologists and stream had questions on the
yeah, I can talk. Well, yeah, the dust removal
collection
system is, yeah, the dust collection system is, these series of hoses that when activated will just remove all of the dust and particulate matter from the room, which is very good for our health. One other tool we use that Michael just mentioned is what's called a microabrader. So this is basically a box that contains a series, I can stick my hand in here. It contains a series of hoses like this, and one with a little, basically a little projector on that will fire tiny particles of basically salts at a fossil specimen and ideally peel away layers of matrix on top of them. It's sort of a chancy thing because you don't know how delicate a fossil is going to be necessarily, so it might end up damaging that. But this is another method we use to pull off the outer coverings that we find on fossils, and that's kind of the technology that we use to deal with the trials and tribulations of getting fossils from the field into collections and exhibit spaces.
And of course, for the exhibit bins, you have put them in a display case so they mount them with metal rods at, or they can use cast bins.
Yeah. Now, Michael, you've been there, obviously. Have you spent a lot of time working in there?
Quite a bit. And is anybody concerned with Dinosaurs or something?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I dropped out for a second.
Okay, putting you back in.
Okay.
Could you summon maybe an Dinosaurs feet or cobra or something?
I don't have those out right now, Michael. I can show them some of the stuff from Dino Fest, but I don't have Edmontosaur material kind of ready to go.
There was some prep that's in the cabinet.
I don't think it's there right now.
Well, that was a great tour.
Okay,
that
cool.
was amazing. And I think now we're going to kind of switch into the Q&A because we all listen to you talk a lot, and we have a lot of viewers that might have specific questions about what you do, the museum, the dinosaurs, any of those things. So please, if anyone has questions for Adam or for Michael, please put them in chat, and we'll get through them. Now's your time to ask some questions. If you don't ask them, I will.
How about the donation thing, Am? Yeah,
We'll mention that at the end.
Okay.
Well, I'll mention that at the end, Michael.
All right, seeing no questions. Which do you enjoy more? I think I know the answer. The field work or the lab work?
The lab work.
Really? I thought it would have been the field work.
The field work, to me, the field work is, I think what it is on a very psychological level, the field work is a much less certain experience. Like I go out, I've never been a big fan of camping. I've never been a big fan of outdoors activities, to be honest. But I love field work because there's the quest, there's the journey to find specimens, but you're never guaranteed. Like you can come home, and I've had field trips where I've gone out in the middle of the Utah desert for 10 hours and found nothing. And that drains you. When you're in the lab, you have some grunt work to do for sure, but you have something. Like you have the specimen in your hand, and to me that's like that is further along in the process, and I find that part of it incredible.
All right, here's a good question. How did you and Michael meet?
I got my job here in July of 2019, and very soon afterwards, I got a phone call from Michael, who is a prolific communicator with members of the paleontological community. and he was really excited to have me come visit some of his Triassic sites. And I will say, I get contacted by people who are convinced they have cool fossils, and who I have to kind of let them down and say, no, that's a really weird shaped rock. And I wasn't quite sure whether Michael had that approach, or whether he was really knew what he was talking about. And arriving in Richmond, in Henrico County, we looked at a site, and immediately started finding little fish scales and what are called coprolites, which are the remains of fossil feces. And since then, it's like, wow, Michael totally knows this stuff, and he knows these sites. So it's been an exciting collaboration to explore the Triassic of the Richmond area, and kind of bring more of the paleontological community in the area, because there actually are a fair number of paleo people with Triassic interests in Virginia, to bring them into the fold and just explore together.
Awesome. More questions. Good question. Thanks for being here, Blackham 7000.
I'm a field guy myself, but just walking outside in the field.
Oh, Miss Virgil says that is awesome. What is your favorite part of the lab work? Do you like digging it out and then seeing what you find? Because you have that, it's like cathartic. You can be like, I did it. I finished digging out that and excavating that fossil from its rock.
My personal favorite part is actually not. It's not something I can show in this room, because it's all digital. I personally, so I mentioned that we're going to use micro CT technology to look inside of that one specimen from the new site. The process of digitally removing the bones and being able to manipulate them in 3 dimensions in a computer, you're getting more data, more resolution, more clarity of what something looks like than you can. As much as I love the physical preparation process, you're just getting more information than you would ever be able to get from this side of things. And to me, that is the catharsis. Like the seeing. I recently did some work on a South African reptile with a skull that's not an inch long. It's maybe 1.5 centimeters, and that's the whole skull. And I was able to pull out the individual tiny bones of its palate, of the housing for its brain, and see those things for the first time. See things that no other person has ever seen or could ever see with physical prep methods, and just put it all back together. Like that to me is the most exciting.
That's cool.
The most exciting activity in paleo.
Oh yeah, I mean we got great characters like at the site. He's like Paul Olsen. I mean he's a great character out in New York. Rob Reeves, Andy Hecker from North Carolina. I mean Caesar John from Maryland. Of course Ben from the Tech, Sal Locker, Texas, Nesbitt, Hans Cecil Sicilian, and many more. Many more people.
Yeah, Michael has helped bring in like a sort of big tent approach to the site, which I think is good, because it's so complex that there's a lot of things that I alone just have no idea how to approach. So getting lots of eyes on it has been useful.
So do you have a collection of 3D models that you've made digitally?
Like prints?
Yeah.
I don't really. We do have a 3D printer. It's okay. Its quality is not, super great, but quite often I even the 3D print to me is not as satisfying as having the digital rendering of the specimen, because the print is just like a piece of paper. The print is never going to be quite as crisp as what you can see on the computer. So, yeah. But at some point I would like to print out like all of the little skulls and things that I've created, just, because I think it'd make a good display to show off specimens that, like, hey, no one could ever see this before we had these technologies, and now, here they are.
You could put them in a digital VR museum.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of like repositories for CAT scan data that have been developed for paleontologists and modern zoologists. There's actually a project that's dedicated to scanning every family of vertebrate animals on the planet and publishing those data online, so that in the future, when this technology and the 3D modeling software is more broadly accessible, literally any person sitting in their living room could say, you know what? I want to make a nice 3D model of a squirrel's thigh bone. And you could do it. You could totally do it. And I think that's a great aspiration. I would do it. I don't know.
Is it possible to take this on that bone box, or taking that idea?
I have the measures already for when I priced out the CT scan. I can email those.
Oh, okay. Hank, if this is all available, we put the email in chat so Aaron can have it.
More questions. Ask more questions. There's a lot of people in chat, and they got a lot of questions.
Like,
yeah.
I will take questions about Jurassic World despite my feelings.
Okay, question for you. So what is the connection between the Triassic dinosaurs and birds?
Distant. So it's interesting. By the Triassic, we do see certain features have emerged in the dinosaurs at that point, that are shared with modern birds. The carnivorous dinosaurs at the time, the group called the theropods, which is the larger group to which birds belong, they have hollow bones. Not quite as hollow as birds, but they're definitely very thin-walled. Based on the evidence, we can see evidence of how their blood vessels were constructed from the interiors of their bones. That's another big advancement recently, is really being able to look at the fine details internally in bones and interpreting things about metabolism, about growth from those kinds of data. These things were growing incredibly fast. They were warm-blooded, so they have all of those features. There's a hypothesis, although there's no hard evidence of it at this point, that the carnivorous dinosaurs, and indeed some of the other dinosaurs of the Triassic, were already fuzzy, that they already had a covering of kind of downy feathers. There is no single specimen that shows that definitively from a Triassic dinosaur. But once you get into the Jurassic, you start to see feathered dinosaurs in abundance. But a lot of features that we think of as birdie definitely have not appeared in the Triassic. It's only late in the Jurassic that we see things like wings. We see sort of lengthening of the forearms and development of the forearms in a way that would support a gliding apparatus, if not true flight. The brains of Triassic dinosaurs, as much as I love them, are just not all that impressive. They look. It's again something you can do with CT scanning is you can make a model of the interior of a dinosaur brain, and for all the world they look like crocodile brains or lizard brains. There's really not a lot of difference, and it's only when you get into the Jurassic animals, particularly those kind of that you would colloquially call the raptor dinosaurs, that we see enlargement of the structures that allow birds to do complex three-dimensional thinking and flight, and also just make them smarter, like, and more able to think than most reptiles. So the Triassic dinosaurs, I mean, the theropods, the carnivorous lineage, is the one that would go on to produce the birds, but there's even with the end of the Triassic, there's a good 50-60 million years before you see more truly birdie features show up.
Awesome. Hank Budd has a question. So what happens if you discover a new creature? Who gets to name it?
That's a great question. It's usually the naming process is something that comes out in the official publication on the specimen. There's actually a whole, I could send you a link to the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, which are some very, very specific rules on how to and not to name new species. They apply across modern vertebrates, modern animals, fossil animals, literally any kind of animal you're gonna name. Has to come out in the official scientific publication, which has to be a peer-reviewed publication. Forever, the author list on that publication is linked to. They are credited as the namers of that new species. Usually, the name development is sort of a tag team effort where people shoot back and forth emails about, like, well, what about this? Can we use this, this local cultural, name as something to it? I personally, I like to involve, I like to involve the local, especially in the case of a site like ours. We don't have anything that could definitively, like, oh, this is a new species we need to get a name on yet. But if that comes about, and I really hope it does, I definitely want to involve the local landowners to say, hey, what do you guys think of this? Do you have any ideas on this name or that? Because it's a group effort that goes beyond the scientists. It's the landowners. It's the folks that helped out in the field. It's all kinds of folks. So even though the scientific process is very regimented, it's the name comes out in the publication is peer reviewed, the author lists are forever credited as the namers. Before that, it is a little more open of a process. And then in terms of colloquial names, like there's of course the most famous dinosaur skeleton probably in the world is Sue the Tyrannosaurus. That's just, whoever comes up with the clever name first that sticks. I was in Wyoming last year to dig some Jurassic fossils, and we found a nice material of the legs of a sauropod, a long-necked dinosaur. And we'd seen cows earlier in the day, so I declared that this dinosaur was Betsy, and that stuck. So forever, this sauropod dinosaur will be called Betsy.
Awesome. Very informative. More questions, everybody. There's got to be more questions out there. That or I keep asking them.
I'll take whatever.
Hank Bud is hoping you guys find something amazing.
Already found something amazing, but no,
They found each other.
I appreciate. This is true. No, I appreciate the well wishes, and I think we keep as we keep finding these new types of preservation, these new types of fossils, we're just going to keep expanding the range of stuff we find, and that to me that skeleton of like that tiny Tannytrachelos from our site is it's there somewhere, and then I'll truly be happy in life.
Yeah, I think especially scientists are probably creating all these post sequences of these big reptiles to simplify them.
Yep, that's the journey.
So you were in the field this past week. What'd you find? Anything?
The past week was actually a very different kind of dig. It was I was invited out by a team, collaborative team from William and Mary and Virginia Tech. This is one of the things that's cool. I went up to the Richmond area again. It was a collaborative at William and Mary and Virginia Tech, but the site was on the opposite side of Richmond. It was on the eastern side of Richmond, whereas our site is on the western side. And there's this amazing dividing line where basically right past the eastern edge of the Richmond city limits, or the western edge of the western edge of the Richmond city limits, you get this transition point where you go from a world of Triassic fossils to what's called the Atlantic coastal plain, which preserves fossils from the past 60 million years of the Atlantic coast. So suddenly you're in this world of marine animals from after the age of dinosaurs. You start, the most abundant things are shark teeth, early whales, and that was what this site was. It was actually a very bizarre environment. It was whale skeletons and bones coming out of a stream bed, but the stream still had water in it. So I was literally digging up bones under 6 inches of water, and it was just, unfortunately they're very hardy bones, so they didn't care, but it was just the most bizarre environment I've ever dug in. So it was a learning experience, and it was good to kind of have, it's always good to have other institutions collaborating with one another, because you get to not only work together on a fossil site but also bounce ideas off one another, because that's key to making science work, period, is not to get too stuck in your own little cubby hole, and getting ideas from the outside world.
So you're talking about how VMNH has Dinosaur Days coming up. What other events do you have at the museum throughout the year?
So the museum, partly because we are geographically quite isolated, Martinsville is a very small town about an hour south of Roanoke, Virginia, if that helps. And as a result, we have a series of festival events throughout the year. This year there's a wildlife festival which sort of celebrated modern diversity of animals. Earlier in the summer, there's a Dinosaur Festival coming up. There's sort of a for Halloween, there's sort of a skeletons focused festival that we're going to host. Last year there was a flight festival, because we opened a new small exhibit on the evolution of flight and sort of the different approaches to flight that different animal groups have. That's the big thing. Like it's variable the dates that these things take place, but if you pay attention to the Virginia Museum of Natural History Facebook page, you'll be able to see any kind of upcoming festival events, and they're fun.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. Please post questions. I'm not the only one asking questions, but a lot of people in chat. Now's your chance. Ask a question. This is what we call wait time in teaching.
Mhm. So what grade do you teach?
I teach mainly 8th grade. I will be teaching a college level high school class. Biology.
Interesting. I have to say I don't know if this is something you can perceive in your teaching experience. I give tours to groups of all ages, from like kindergartners up to senior citizens. Right around eighth to 10th is the single worst tour audience I can have, because I'm very much someone who needs the energy of a group to respond to get questions out of.
Sorry, did you say something? I was on my phone.
Dang it. No, I mean, even when they're not, they're usually just like, yeah, okay.
You know what the funny thing is, though, with those kids, they might not admit it, but they think what you just said was the most awesome thing ever. That 8th grader had no affect. It's like completely no affect. Will go home and be like, "Oh my God, it was so amazing." They can't do it in front of their peers. Yeah, but,
Right.
but in front of their parents, they'll be like, "Oh, it was great. I love this tour."
That's funny. Yeah, I've always hoped that was the case.
It
and
is.
They weren't
It is.
just like, you know, I wasn't missing some kind of technique I should be using to draw them out or something like that.
Because I've had kids actually tell me before, I've done like this huge, cool lab where I thought was awesome. I'm like, afterwards, it really fell flat. No one really liked it. And they're like, that was the best class we've had in years. I'm like, what? Why didn't you smile? Yeah, Miss Frizzle's a teacher too, so she could relate. Hey, Hank Bud, thanks for being here. Appreciate the chat. There's been a request for cool science facts that you know. Like, what do you usually at a tour like wow people with? You're like, oh, they're gonna like find this amazing.
In terms of facts, gosh, no, I'm on the spot. It's usually something about the Triassic. So, I'd say one of the most remarkable things about it is part of the reason there's so much weirdness in diversity within the Triassic is it's preceded by the largest mass extinction in Earth's history. 252 million years ago marks the divergence between the Permian and the Triassic periods, and the PT extinction took out somewhere between 85 to 90% of species in the fossil record. By comparison, the one that takes out the dinosaurs that aren't birds, 66 million years ago, that was more like 65% of species on the planet. So the Permian one is a much more dramatic and massive event that seems to, in many ways, wipe the slate clean for new diversity to emerge.
Cool. That is true. All those mass extinctions, and we're in one right now. How exciting to be part of a mass extinction!
Yeah.
We could all be so privileged.
On a completely not morbid but like clinical look at it, I do wonder, like, geologically, what would it look like? It's a rapid thing. But we don't actually know how rapidly a lot of these past mass extinctions happened either. We don't know if the dinosaurs went out within a century of the asteroid impact or thousands and thousands of years. Like, we really don't have a sense, the resolution isn't that good. We don't have a sense for just how quick these things happen. So I wonder sometimes whether the record of our time will look like, oh my God, everything was wiped out instantly, or if it'll be like, no, it kind of looks like the other ones. Except for all these buildings, it kind of looks like the other ones.
It'd be like a KT boundary of plastic.
Yeah. KT boundary, but it's all microplastics.
It could happen. Okay. Well, I don't want to take any of your time, Adam. This is longer than you said initially that you were going to talk for. So
There was that question.
there was
What's
another
that?
question. Did I miss a question? Oh, how many teeth have been found at the site? Oh my gosh.
Help me out, Michael, because you found quite a few lately.
There you go.
I think we've got like 8 here. And what have you got? Like 4 or 5?
Yeah, 5.
Okay. Yeah, so we're just over a dozen at this point. Yeah. And they're diverse. Most of them are those sort of cone-shaped teeth that might be phytosaurs or might not be. But we've got a few that are what are called recurved. That look kind of more like dinosaur teeth, sort of knife-shaped with little serrations and things like that. So
Yeah,
they're tantalizing. They're
I know.
very, very. They're
One
tantalizing for sure.
nice recurved one here. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
I would have thought there'd be more teeth. Honestly.
No, not yet. There's no pattern. The thing that's frustrating is there's no pattern to them. It's not like, oh my gosh, we found one tooth. If we dig around the same area, we're gonna find 5 more. It's like, I found one tooth. And that's all you're gonna get today, even if you dig around the exact same area.
I mean, honestly, when I looked at the specimens, you really have to have a trained eye because I would not have picked those out as teeth. Really, I mean,
It takes practice, but you'd be surprised at how quickly someone could pick it up. I think it can look like, oh my god, it's just, it's like magic, but it's not. It really is the same kind of search image that you develop for literally any visual activity. It is in some ways it is more like an art than a science to be able to pick up on that stuff. But like anything where you detect details, it's just like that.
I mean, I was up a 5 by plus run back in 2020, and I picked it up right away. But
Yep, you knew exactly what it was.
yeah, I remember that day. I came yelling for the evening. That was July of 2020. June.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's July, so we've been working at site close to 2 years.
well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so we are going to finish things up here, and we're going to raid someone else unless anyone does have questions.
Can Anne talk about the donation really quick? So
I will as soon as no one
Okay.
has questions, Michael.
I'm not seeing any more.
Okay. What Michael has been talking about is we do, we accept donations to help out specifically with this specific project. Those primarily go to the kind of the glues and equipment we need, the micro CAT scanning process, and all of that is takes some cash. So any kind of assistance that anyone might be willing to offer would be much appreciated. And I believe the link has been posted
Yes, it has.
someplace. That's awesome. Much appreciated. Do you have anything to add to that, Michael?
now, thank you all, and hopefully we'll be back another time with some updates.
Yep, we can
That would be
probably do
awesome.
that for sure.
Yeah, I know me and Anne would love to come back and maybe do another one in the fall or something.
All right, we are gonna go and raid. I believe Science, not Science Streams. That's me, but Science stream. They're doing some art today, but I think they're gonna do some microscopy as well. So we will do that. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Adam and Michael. It was great. I learned a lot. It was amazing.
Awesome. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed doing this, and thank you for the opportunity to, spread my science communication wings a little bit further.
And I have definitely a place to visit when I visit Virginia again.
Cool,
Little known fact: I was born in Virginia.
All right.
So, yeah. There you go.
Cool. All righty. Thanks for everyone for coming out, and have a good evening. And Michael, I'll talk to you later this week.
I might talk to you Friday.
All right, we're gonna head out to Science. If I can find them. There we go. They're doing some art, and we're gonna raid there. Please hang out for that raid. I know many of you probably know that channel already, and I appreciate everyone being here. Please come back. I'll be doing some series of streams as I prep for the school year, reviewing some bio, and I also game a lot. So hop in the Discord and find me on Twitter. And thanks for being here. Let's go raid.
You are wholesome as fat. Oh, and we got a raid too! Raiders! Welcome on in!
Science